As one of Disney's most famous songs goes, when you wish upon a star, doesn't matter who you are, anything your heart desires will come to you. But if only that were true for the writers. Welcome back everyone, I'm your host Kennedy, and today on Most Amazing we are diving deep into the Disney archives and revealing some of the movies that never saw the light of day. So without further ado, this is the top 10 abandoned Disney projects you weren't supposed to see. Starting us off at number 10, Mort. It's not incredibly often that we get to see a darker side of Disney. I mean, besides the shockingly frequent plots surrounding parental death cloaked in song and dance. But truly, I mean, you'd think they would figure out how big the market for this vibe is, considering the skyrocketing success of the assumed to be flop, The Nightmare Before Christmas. But alas, this abandoned project will likely never see the light of day. Mort, a project that was supposed to be based on Terry Pratchett's novel of the same name, was going to follow the story of a man named Mort who becomes Death's apprentice, which already sounds pretty interesting to me. Reportedly on his first solo mission, Mort, however, accidentally ends up messing with the fabric of time, which results in the prevention of a death. And of course, the person he accidentally prevents from dying is a princess. Other than that, there's not much information surrounding the film, except that the creators of Moana were also apparently attached to it, and the reason behind it being dropped is fairly hush-hush as well. Some have speculated that they were forced to drop the concept as they couldn't obtain the rights to the story, but unfortunately, whatever the reason was, we will never see it. Which sucks, cause this sounds like it would have been awesome. Coming in at number 9, Dumbo 2. Some sequels are great, others are, well, let's just say not so great. And although I loved Dumbo, it's hard to tell if this one would have fallen into the former or the latter of those two categories. The sequel was apparently going to take place exactly one day after where we left off in the first film, and was going to follow Dumbo along with a crew of other young animals who get separated from each other in New York City. While trying to find their way back to each other, each character then learns how to fix their own problems, and reportedly each animal was intended to symbolize a different aspect of growing up. Now, again, I could see this maybe working out with the right writing and a good plot. I mean, Disney's no stranger to a metaphor, but I could also see it going horribly wrong fairly easily as well. Though there is no official reason as to why the production was left behind, it was pretty much just dropped in 2006 after years of delays. With that in mind, I think we will just have to trust them on this one and assume that it was not going to be a great addition to the franchise. Coming in at number 8, My Peoples. As rumor has it, this next film was scrapped in favor of Chicken Little, and well, I will let you decide if that was the right call or not. My Peoples was reportedly going to be a story about two families who hate each other, the Harpers and McGees, whose children, Elgin and Rose, fall in love. Think like a Disney version of Romeo and Juliet, just, you know, without all the death and stuff. Said to be set in Texas during the 1940s, apparently there was also a large focus on dolls in the show, as Elgin liked to create dolls, and at one point there was going to be some kind of crazy mishap which would bring the dolls to life, and they were going to help bring the two families together. Which, I mean, honestly sounds like a good premise for a movie if you ask me. Again, it's really just Romeo and Juliet with a happy ending. In terms of why it was cancelled, it's a little unclear. Barry Cook, who was the driving force behind the production, says he partly blamed himself for it being struck down, though he holds no bitter feelings towards those who inevitably shut it down. The only real question is, would it have been better or worse than Chicken Little? I guess we'll never find out. Next up at number 7, Pinocchio 2. When it comes to the classics, Pinocchio is definitely one of Disney's most beloved tales. I mean, it was a hit when it was released 83 years ago, and it remains an iconic story to this day. And when something does that well for so long, sometimes it's better to just leave it alone. Apparently when the sequel was still in the works, it was going to, of course, focus on Pinocchio as a real boy, and was going to look at the question of why life appears to be unfair sometimes. Which, I mean, doesn't quite give the same excitement as a puppet who turns into an actual human being, but hey. Now, to be fair, there have been some remakes of the original story, so Disney has definitely attempted some modern adaptations on the original, but even so, they haven't been super well received to my knowledge, so I imagine canceling the sequel to this classic was probably the right call. Coming in at number 6, Fantasia 2006. Had this movie come to fruition, it would have been the third installment of the anthology, and from the sounds of it, it could have actually been really cool. Now, unlike some of the others on this list, it wasn't cut in some grand dramatic outrage. The truth is, we actually have no clue why it was cut. All you can find online is that the reason it was dropped is unknown, which could either be a very boring answer or a very interesting one. By the time productions came to a halt, there had been a few proposed segments, and so they released the 4 shorts to the public and decided to just leave it at that. Allegedly, there were plans to use music from all over the world for this movie, not just classical European pieces, and they were also going to feature singing voices rather than just instrumentation, which would have definitely given it that special bit of Disney sparkle, but alas, I guess it was not meant to be. Coming in at number 5, Monsters Inc. 2 Lost in Scaradise. Now, I'm a Monsters Inc. girly through and through, so I'll admit I'm a little curious about what this one could have been. Apparently, the story was going to be set after the first film and followed Mike and Sully trying to visit Boo for her birthday in the human world. However, the twist was that Boo's family had moved, and so the movie turned into an adventure to track her down. Now, it's unclear what kind of shenanigans would have ensued, or how much later this would have been set from the original, but I do think it could have been interesting to see Boo actually be able to talk to Sully and Mike and have her try to explain to her family who these strange hairy monsters stalking them across the globe are, although, that being said, most of her charm was that she was so little, so who knows. Of course, we will never know if it could have been good or not, as the project was scrapped after Disney shut down the studio making it in 2006, called Circle 7, and in its place released the prequel Monsters University. So what do you think? Would you see the sequel, or do you think it was better left abandoned? Next up at number 4, Frady Cat. Something that I never thought I would see in the same sentence would be Disney and film noir thriller. But apparently there was once a time when a comedic version of a Hitchcock-style movie was in the works, which is enticing to say the least. According to the little info you can find, the abandoned project was going to surround Oscar, a skittish, privileged domestic cat living a rather dull and unexciting life, who one way or another gets wrapped up with Karina the cockatoo and somehow becomes involved in a missing persons case. But I guess the higher-ups at Disney thought their target demographic wouldn't have much interest in a G-rated thriller mystery a la Hitchcock, and so the film was cancelled. Allegedly, they were also concerned they weren't going to be able to sell merch or create spin-offs from it either. I mean, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a great movie to me. If anything, I'm sure there are tons of Disney adults or parents who would have liked it, and at the very least, I am sure it would have been better than adding a 3rd or 4th movie to an existing franchise, but hey, what do I know? Coming in at number 3, The Search for Mickey Mouse. Originally intended as a movie to celebrate Mickey Mouse's 75th anniversary, or birthday if you will, as the title suggests, it was going to be about a missing Mickey Mouse whose friends Minnie, Goofy, Donald, and Basil of Baker Street go on a journey to find him. Naturally, on their great travels, they were going to run into a slew of other Disney characters like Alice, Peter Pan, and Aladdin, who would no doubt help them in their great search for the missing mouse. However, in a rather uneventful twist of events, this movie was cancelled simply due to a straight up lack of ideas. Apparently writers just could not get an interesting story out, and so they decided to scrap it all together. Now, I have to say that's gotta be some intense writer's block if not one person can think of a good idea. Plus, there have been some movies since that weren't all that groundbreaking ideas wise, so you have to wonder just how bad the ideas were to make them want to toss out the whole story and never look back. Coming in at number 2, Rumpelstiltskin. While they are certainly heavily watered down, many of the original Disney films are actually based off Brothers Grimm tales, like The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty, just to name a few. And apparently, at one point in time, the tale of Rumpelstiltskin was on the table too. Now, for those who don't know this story, the SparkNotes version is essentially there's a man who lies to a king, bragging that his daughter can spin straw into gold. The girl then becomes the king's prisoner, where she is locked in a room filled with straw, and the king threatens to kill her if she does not spin all the straw into gold by morning. Then along comes Rumpelstiltskin, an imp who makes a deal with the girl to spin the straw into gold for a price. However, after the first time, the king, now thinking she can spin straw, starts demanding more of the girl, still threatening her with death if she can't complete the task. And so she must demand more of the imp until eventually the price is her firstborn. From there, the story then becomes a bet as to whether the girl, who's now the queen, can guess the imp's name in order to keep her firstborn. I mean, honestly, I think this would have made a great movie, so it's really too bad that this one was abandoned. And last up in our number 1 spot, Wildlife. During the late 90s, this film began production, and the plan was to show a more mature side of Disney, centered around 1970s American culture. In terms of plot, it sounds like it was going to be about 2 high-strung, competitive talent seekers, Red and Kitty Glitter, who were on the hunt for a new star for their club called Wildlife. Through a series of events, the pair discover Ella the elephant from the zoo, and in some kind of strange electrocution scenario involving loose wires on the stage, she becomes a confident diva who is destined to achieve riches and fame. However, in the end, Ella yearns for the simple life she led at the zoo, of course causing some complications for her managers. Now, according to what I found out about this abandoned project, it had easily the most dramatic ending than all of the others on this list. As I previously mentioned, it was quite a bit more mature than Disney usually went, allegedly filled with what one might call adult humor, and apparently during the 1999 viewing, Vice Chairman at the time Roy Disney was so disgusted and outraged by the film that he ordered it to be shut down immediately. And that was that. It never saw the light of day. But I have to admit, that makes me kind of want to watch it even more. Like, what was so inappropriate about this movie that caused so much drama? I mean, let's be honest, we've all seen some weird moments in Disney movies that make you question how they got past editing. So what made this one a write-off? I guess we'll never know. Well, that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to like it and hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll see you next time, friends.